start a demonstration for you guys. So, check out Alana over there. She's got her cold bubble ready to go. Plants are on her foot, which is a signal to me to bring the color on over. So I've heated this chunk of color bar up. You can see that the clear bubble right there, nice and cold, never below 900 degrees though. You drop below that threshold, your work will most likely thermally shock, you know, implode, explode, crack, fall on the ground, all that kind of bad stuff. So her core is nice and stiff. Obviously you can see the color nice and hot right here. Everything's gonna look orange, guys. And this is actually a really nice sort of dark green that has a lot of silver nitrate in it. So it's a rather unique color. I'll pull out a sample so you guys can see, but in essence, Alana cuts that chunk of color off, positions it into a disc or a hat on top. So you guys can, here's our glasses. When the glass gets thin, it loses its temperature almost immediately. I can pull it out with my hand still. But in essence, what that tells us is that when the glass is nice and thick, you know, we can get a lot of stuff done. As we progress through blowing the piece up and getting farther into it, our working window gets shorter. So as we progress and go farther into the whole glass making process, the material will of course get thinner and thinner and thinner. So when the glass is thick, we can get a lot done. When it's thin, we have to work really, really fast. We refer to that as the working window. You know, how much we can execute in a specific amount of time. So you guys can see, nice and cold up here, that right there, I'll get burned off and have to burn some sick leaves. So we'll stop right there. You can see how dense that color is already. You still can't even see through it. So smoking.
Yeah.
So the moment this one, you can kind of see into it. It'll be a really kind of nice, almost foresty green, a little hint of blue, but the silver nitrate is the important thing in this. Silver nitrate will make our glass much shinier. If you guys walk around the exhibition, you'll see some work is nice and really shiny, and some seems to be a lot more dull. So besides the addition of lead to glass to make it nice and bright and shiny, things like silver, gold, excellent for making the glass nice and shiny, and also for making color. So what Alana's going to do right now is she's going to heat for as long as she can without compromising her core. I mean, she's basically going to exploit the temperature differences. We need to have a core that's stable enough to push again. So touch down on the arbor, rotate, and you push that layer of color up and over the bubble. It's basically what's called an overlay. And you know, if you guys were to actually take one of these pieces, obviously not a good idea, and put it on like a tile saw or a diamond saw and cut it, what you would see is actually a lot of glass. About 90% clear in all of this work and 5 to 10% color. So if you look at the edge, you see a thin, thin line of color that's less than a millimeter in diameter or thickness, and it sort of looks like a ring on a tree stump or something like that. It is really, really thin. Now we can apply color on any plane or level that we want. You guys will probably notice that for us, we build our glass up in layers, known as gathers in the furnace. And on every single plane, we can put color on it pretty much to our heart's desire. Now what she has over here is what's called frit. You can see some of this in the jars down here. And you can compare this to Julie's Machia series, the work with the spots or Machia on it. This stuff's fairly easy. You sprinkle it out on the table, kind of like chicken feed, roll the hot glass through it. It will bond to the surface through transmission of heat. You heat the stuff up, it rounds out, and presto, you have Machia or spot. So fairly simple application, but one thing that's important to point out is that since we use different oxides or different elements, that alters our glass tremendously. So blue, being made of either cobalt or copper, it's really, 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 really soft, heats up fast, and cools down slowly. White is made from titanium and zinc, so it's totally the opposite. Heats up very slow, very stiff, cools off fast. So the more you mix up these little spots of color, the much higher degree of difficulty you're going to have. You have a lot of different personalities, a lot of different resistances. So even though this is an easy application to put on the glass, it's very hard to work with. The Machia series are actually kind of a nightmare to make, as they have 3 overlays, 3 times what Alana did right there. Application of frit all around the base there, and then that line that goes around the edge or perimeter known as a lip wrap. So I'll pull some stuff out of here so we have some sort of visual aids, guys. So here's just a regular old bowl. It's kind of a nice one to compare to the Machia series because we have some of those ingredients here. Like I mentioned earlier on, if I hold it up to the light, you guys can see that texture in the color itself. That's the reason why some people avoid using frit as their base. And the overlay produces a perfectly consistent color. So you guys can see some of the different Machia spots here. And then of course, the lip wrap. And so what we have right now is just our core with a single overlay, 1 application of color. Totally common to spend way more time on your color deco or application than even the foam itself. So right now she's hanging out waiting for it to cool down. Our base material in our furnace over here, guys, is completely clear. And it's of a soda lime type, so it's silica, soda ash, potash, and limestone. Those are the big four ingredients to lower silica's melting temperature. So she waits until the glass can sustain both the heat and weight of the next layer. If we go in too hot and it dribbles off in our tank, that means we get to spend 3 days taking care of it. We have to scoop it all out, wash it out, refill it again. So that's a mistake that we've never done here yet. And I hope we never do. So right there, you can see Alana has another nice big gather right there. And so she basically gets back into the bench, and she's going to pick up a tool right there. Now check it out when it comes in contact with the glass. So right there, you can see what's kind of smoke, but it's actually mostly predominantly steam. So in the early phase of the glass, when it's nice and thick, that block, that wood tool right there, thoroughly saturated in water, made of cherry wood. The water converts to steam, and it is steam that is our lubricant. It's kind of a thermal barrier for us. Later on, we're going to use water to shock the glass, injure it, and tell it when and where to initiate its fracture. So she's just basically positioning that color nice and even. If you ever wondered, how do you do a color fade? You look at the chandeliers up here, some of these have this really nice rich intensity at the center, and then they fade out to almost perfectly clear at the tip. It's like watercolor, guys. Push that clear all the way to the tip and blow into it. Simple way to fade the color, and it will be done on that gather layer there. That's how you can break the color up. If she positions it nice and even everywhere, how does the color blow out nice and even? So glass blowing, extremely common sense. Absolutely, there's a ton of science involved, whether or not this glass blower is melting. So she's going to go ahead and add some spots or mafia, just like I was mentioning earlier. And so our colors we have there are blue, green, and a little bit of white. So we'll have two very soft colors, one very stiff. So it will present a problem later on. But you'll see Alana will handle it like a pro, no problem at all. So once she's got all of her glass right there, she returns to this reheating chamber over here. This one right here is at 2,250 degrees. Nice thing about this one, we can turn it on and off daily. This one over here, our main furnace, I turned this on back in November. We don't get to turn this off until we leave in June. So whether you're working or not, this thing's purring along, eating in your pocketbook. So this is one of the major commitments of glass blowing, and honestly, just one of the major costs here. So I'm just leaving it open so you guys get a little bit of warmth for a second. And now I gotta go and do my job. So you can see Alana gets that nice and hot. We go back into the block. She's gonna shape this up nice and consistent. We're gonna start to inflate this bubble. Now, as long as we're in a Q-tip shape or what looks like a bubble, we've made no commitments to any form. This can be anything she absolutely wants. So you're going to see something familiar with this pad right there, mentioned a little bit earlier. So again, you guys see that steam and smoke, same principle as before. This one is awesome because it's recycled, super duper cheap. I think we make this yesterday or the day before. Let's see. Anyways, newspaper, the Seattle Times, guys. So you just find yourself an old newspaper, soak it in water, pick out the colored sections, get rid of those. Smells gross, makes you slow over time, I would imagine. So, sales or whatever you would call it, classifieds, excellent for this. So just, again, simple water, thoroughly saturated newspaper, and that's a wonderful tool because you finally get to use your fingers and your palm. I mean, it's a real luxury in glass blowing. Outside of that, you're using all these rigid tools and stuff. So, any of these wood tools that are going to come in contact with the glass itself are always going to be cherry wood or some type of fruit wood. We need wood that's low in sap, dense enough to last for a while, and it must be able to hold water efficiently. So cherry wood is excellent. Now that table right there, she's dealing with basically that heat issue. When she goes into the reheating chamber, the tip will always go in first. When she exits, the tip will always exit last. Thus, the tip has too much heat. And what she did right there was terminate the glass, thicken it, and cool it. So she can blow out the most difficult area. So you want to take care of your hardest part of your job first. Inflate the most difficult area. And that's what that metal table there, known as the Marver, is used for. So I'm going to go ahead and prep up some of her tools. I am her assistant, so it's my job to make sure that everything's set and ready to go. These are called the jacks right here. This is the primary tool of the glass blower. And these have been around for a really long time. They really literally are perfection. You can't really improve upon these. And you're going to see these are highly versatile. But the primary reason they were created is you got to get the bubble off the end of the straw. So what's the most common sense way to do that? Check the diameter in one spot and break it there. So with that sort of barbecue tong looking tool right there, we can decrease the diameter right there in what we call the neckline And she'll actually create a nice tight line there that she'll be able to direct the fracture to follow perfectly. So you can see smoke coming off the blades. We use beeswax to lubricate those. You know, really nice high flash point, smells good, non-hot. That's all we need. So you make a mistake, you know, use some paraffin wax or surf wax, you get greeted with a flame that flashes up right towards your face. So beeswax, simple beeswax works brilliantly as a lubricant on that tool, pretty much that tool alone. So you guys will see that, you know, as the work gets larger, we have sets of doors on our reheating chamber here. And just to be honest with you guys, our studio here is excellent. I love this shop, but it's not a big shop. There's a lot of work here throughout the exhibition. Obviously, you couldn't make here. If you go to the boathouse ever, get an opportunity to do that, you're going to see that they have a reheating chamber where Alana's at that's 10 times that size. Their furnace, ours is a 150, theirs is a 1500. So, you know, if you want to make big work, you're going to need more people, bigger equipment. That's basically how you break it down. Now, a lot of times you have films inside the theater over there. People will be curious to see that, you know, sometimes his crews are around 26, 27 people, all working in the shop all at once. So that's kind of the key to glass blowing, you know, people. More people, go faster, bigger, and more complex. So cinching down that neck to make sure that we'll be able to get this off later on. You know, we'll use rotation, obviously, and gravity to shape the glass too. Here comes that wet seal times again. That wet pad or paper right there, again, to protect the most hot area and to shape it a little bit. Looking for torch? Gotcha, boss. So, that's a wee one. It's going to be super cute. So one of the biggest breakthroughs in glass blowing, believe it or not, is that torch. The ability to pull a trigger or push a button and get heat right where you want. You know, you go back 70 years ago, we didn't have that. I mean, to be honest with you, the closest thing they had to it was a small kid with a burning stick. And that was used, you know, back in the old days. Nowadays, push a button, get heat exactly where you want. You know, to do this the traditional way, you would navigate the reheating chamber over there. You had to be very patient and quite masterful at your heats. It took a long time and it did take a lot of precision. So nowadays, push a button, bang, to get it right where you want. But this expands the boundaries of what can be done in glass blowing tremendously. And I'll be honest with you guys, there is a lot of work throughout the exhibition here that could not be done without torches. So that's one of the things we do not have here is a large array of torches behind the bench. And you know, that's the most simple thing you'll ever see. That's a Home Depot special. But if you go to Chihuli's place, you're going to see, you know, blow torches with flames that'll easily go this far. So when you guys see a shape that sort of defies logic, it looks nice and swirly, and great bends in it, and all of a sudden there's this one area that's round, it's just poofed out torches. So, all right guys, we're going to flip this piece around right now. Essentially, Alana's completed the bottom half, so it's time to flip it around and do the top half. So we use something called a punty. You know, there's no hole in this, so we can't make bubbles and such, but what Alana's relying on me to make is basically, again, it's called a punty, but it's a Q-tip shape that is presented at exactly the right temperature. So I'll gather a little glass out of our furnace here. You know, one thing about glass, if you gather it at a sort of a nice rate, it just kind of automatically goes into that sort of Q-tippy form. But this is way too hot. If we join now, we're bound forever. When she goes to try to break the piece off, the whole thing shatters. So the trick to this is getting the right shape, but also, I'd argue more importantly, joining at the right temperature. It needs to be hot enough to sustain the work while she puts a lot of pressure on the glass, but then it needs to detach as clean and easily as possible. So make sure the shape is good. Alana's doing something called flashing, giving it short, sustained bursts of energy to make sure it doesn't, you know, implode, explode, crack, fall off the pipe, all of that good stuff. So again, at all times, Alana is staying above about 950. You drop below that, most likely you're going to thermally shock, and especially outdoors here, you know, where there's rain and such. All right, Alana, you ready to rock? So here we go. We'll sync up our temperatures to make sure that this is going to stick right. Now we're going to break the glass in a second, so this is of course one of the two times where you have a higher possible failure rate. So here we go, guys. Now if any of you guys have ever gotten to do, you know, throw clay on a wheel, very similar principles right here. You want to touch down and center your work as perfectly as possible. You know, if you're making a symmetrical form and expect it to come out symmetrical, you need everything to be centered, and also the weight of your material too. So right now she's just adjusting. You'll notice she's always rotating the pipe. That's something that needs to become innate in you. You know, you'll know you're there when you're at home, you know, sweeping and the broom is spinning. So a little bit of water, we need to signal the glass to break. So we stress the glass out with a drop of water. Comes off just like that, like exactly the way she planned. Nicely done, Alana, very nice. So we're gonna give it a quick flash. We got to stay above that 9 or 950, and then there's still enough heat right now that Alana can wiggle this piece around and ensure that her work is centered. Do you want a lip wrap on this? Cool, cool. I'll get you set. So she's gonna go ahead and set that up. We're going to go ahead and demonstrate really quickly, how lip wraps are done too. This is a traditional application on blown glass work, but you'll see throughout a lot of Julie's work, especially on the Nokia series or the Persians, that lip wrap really sets the work off. So we're going to do one of those really quick. She's just locking that piece into position right now. I'll gather up some glass. And we're going to go ahead and sort of draw a line around that lip or perimeter of the vessel right there. It's got bubbles in it. So if you guys were to look inside of our furnace right here, what you see inside here essentially, there's a crucible inside here. It looks sort of like a salad bowl. But the tricky thing about it is quite difficult to actually see the glass itself. When I open this, you guys can look and see, everything's orange inside of there, but the glass is clear. So you kind of have to treat the glass like a puddle. Put your rod out over the glass. When you see the reflection, you'll wait till the two touch. There's the surface finally. So a lot of people are alarmed when they first look inside of there, but they actually cannot even see the glass itself. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another little thing of color right here. Again, this is called Grit. We don't make this ourselves. We buy it from stores made in Germany or New Zealand. So I was mentioning earlier what goes in to make these colors. And it's going to be the same type of stuff that goes into, say, ceramic glazes or even oil painters paint. So right here, be a little bit of cobalt, a little bit of cadmium for the most part. A little bit of trisodium phosphate too. So we're going to have to heat these up. Anybody got any questions right now? You guys doing good? Doing okay?
Isn't this stuff really heavy?
Oh yeah. So there's a few here, and what we're doing and what Julian and his crew does is night and day, totally different. On his crew, some of that work, there are pieces here that where it's just one lone object that is 40 to 50 pounds, so the Niijima floats out there. So to do something like that, you're going to need more people, but you're also going to need a few big ones. And so there's a position in the hot shop called pole turner. Basically, it's the person who heats the glass up, and their job all day long is to rotate the pipe. So it's going to be a huge human, and so you have to hire something like that when you make bigger work. You also have to inflate your crew dramatically because you need people to run around with paddles and shield you from the heat. So there would be 3 people shielding the gaffer while he or she works on that piece. Also, the gaffer would need to be in the bench because the work is too big. You'd be working outside the bench with a big human working again as that pole turner. So put one more coating of this glue on. The goal here is to try to hide that clear as well as possible. On all of Chihuli's work, they never use grit for lip wraps. It's going to be bar colors. It's just a lot more consistent, and the color is a lot more robust too. So Alana's got this pretty much ready to go. She's waiting on me to get this bit heated up. So essentially, just get the glass, cover it in a little bit of color, and then shape it into sort of a spear tip or finger. And then I'm going to feed this sort of bit of color to Alana. She'll touch down on the opening or lip of the vessel and draw a line around the mouth. One of the neat things that when she does is watch the way we disconnect glass. We'll usually use momentum and a striking of glass. You'll see in a second here, guys. All right, Alana, I'll be ready on the next one. I'll heat out the whole, or heat out the furnace.
We'll take a flash.
Sounds good, boss. So just basically sort of a spear tip-like shape right here, guys. And then I'll present this to Alana. And so the application we're doing right now, which is for the lip wrap, this is the same way, the same type of application of color if you want a spiral line radiating out from the center. So I don't want to get too far into that, but essentially you can just touch down one part of the bubble, roll away from you, and thread the line of color on there like putting threads on a screw. It's almost there, Alana. It is a wee one. We can still get to that. It's going to be cutie. just whip it off, it auto cuts itself, and again, when it's thin, it loses temperature so quick. I think the neat thing about it, when it's held in the pool like that, if I had super long arms, you can stretch this for probably about 50 feet. You know, if you ever get a chance, watch a video on YouTube, glass blowing India. It's pretty awesome. It shows them how to make bangles and stuff, but it uses that basic method right there to make bangles and such. So, just like that, she has a nice line of color around the mouth. Just going to position it into place a little bit. Looking good. So just like that, nice little line there. And then we're going to go ahead and begin to open this form. And so what she'll basically be doing is open from base to lip. When we work in glass blowing, we typically pretty much never work by ourselves. We're always working in a team. And, you know, it is part of the assistant's job, too, to also help a bit in the shaping of the form, or at least supply some support. So she'll have me put a little bit of stability on the base of the form with a wood paddle the lip to make sure that's clean, too. But everything's kind of a system in glass blowing. So when we're doing that, we call it a sandwich. You know, wood, glass, wood, that kind of stuff. But when you flip it around, it translates to this. Top and bottom are parallel. You know, as craftspeople, we got to get that right. You know, you're off by 1% of the 1% incline or tilt or whatever. Everybody sees it. So you know, just simply being over there with two paddles will help make sure that everything is nice and parallel. We can't mess that up. Everybody, whether they're intending to or not, registers that and they see it immediately. Nice thing about being on the punty with this flipped around, you can really see where Alana is focusing the heat. So I'm going to be in the way for 1 second. There is a little reflection in the mirror up here too, guys, but I've got to give Alana that support I was talking about. Longer on the blowpipe, we have a device that will allow us to reverse inflate the form, provided that the lip is still closed enough. So this goes in the mouth, plugs it. We obviously got the straw right here. It's called a Sophietta. You know, just basically loosely translates in English to a little puffer. So wonderful tool right there. And it's kind of part of that system again. To obviously blew air into the vessel, increases volume, which helps to thin the glass out and make sure that all of the glass is of consistent thickness. So the next part, Alana's basically got to take this bubble and stretch it from base to mouth, but even glass blowers understand a little bit of physics and such. And we know one of the things that we're worried about when we're making bowls and other forms is, you know, rotation. You turn too quick and you can flare out like a bell or a hat. And if it gets too far out there, we're not going to be able to build up enough speed, heat, or strength to push it back in. So we'll intentionally slow areas down by keeping them tilted in. And that's in essence what she's doing right now. She'll spin quick to expand this area back here. But if we were to allow that lip to come all the way out, since it's what heats up the fastest, rotation would end up just flaring it out. So we keep it tilted in to slow it down. So again, a little sandwich right here. Cooling that front, because again, that's the area that's always going to go into the hole first. Another tool we have right here called the pachofis, or wood jacks. These are great because you can actually, you know, shape the inside of something that's curved. If we try to use the sharp tools right there, they're just going to scratch it and stab it. Not so good. So again, just cherry wood dowels soaked in water, and we can use this to reset the bottom. And so in essence, what Alana's doing, stretching the bottom of the form, and then working that profile from base to lip, while making sure that the lip does not escape, in other words, flare out. If that happens, you just can't recover from that. So we always keep it turned in. Now, if it did escape, that just means plan B. You got to change your form. So if she were to get it really, really hot and just turn very quickly, you would, in essence, end up with a rondelle or a flat piece. You know, very similar to what you see up in the glass house up here. So she just slows down until she meets that first speed. Oh, sorry, Alana. And here we go. So we're going to use these strokes really quick. Now the real key to glass blowing is that left arm. The left arm in glass blowing is your motor and it's your brain. You know, it decides, you know, when to turn forward, when to turn fast, how quick to go, how much torque to apply, and most importantly, whether you're on center or not. Look good, look good. So right there, she expands the bottom. You can see the profile is set, and then she'll basically follow that all the way up to the lip. You know, so in glass blowing, since everything's really based off the left side of your body, again, that's your motor and your brain, that's really one of the biggest limiting factors in glass blowing, is getting that left arm up to speed. Now, if you happen to be left-handed, a common question we get is, hey, do you guys, you know, actually give lefties left-handed tools and equipment. No. It's basically a majority win situation. That's the truth. But in glass blowing, at least, if you're a lefty, you get to stay on center in the beginning, or at least marginally close. So I love teaching, and the lefties, they feel like they're getting a little bit of the short end, and they kind of are. But in the very beginning, they're the ones taking off first. They can stay on center. Well, the problem is obviously they're fumbling around trying to get the tools going. But everybody in all the classes realizes very quickly that you need both. So in the long run, it does not matter whatsoever. So Alana's going to begin to release that lip, let it kind of come all the way up. So a common question that we get is, hey, do you guys burn yourself? In the beginning, yeah, of course. I think it's very, 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 very similar to being a chef. You're going to get burned, you're going to get cut, you're going to learn. But no matter what we do, I'm going to open your door for you. You're good? The area that we tend to get, Alana's blown glass for almost a decade now. When we typically get burned these days is proximity lead. I mean, you're just trying to do your job. That tender part of your wrist and arm is exposed. Your skin's going to give. So that's what the assistant's there for also. You shield it. So the knee ejema folks or the mock issue is a really big word. No joke, it's like this. Maybe the gaffer working, and a shielder here, and then a shielder shielding the shielder, and then one more in that chain shielding the whole line there. So as the work gets larger, you need other units simple for protection. So you're going to see Alana begin to allow this lip to come out a bit more. Oh, it's a wee one. Looks like a good oatmeal bowl. Looking good. So at that point, you can see Alana's happy with her form right there. But we need to get this off of the punty. That's the final move before it goes in that silver box that they're called the annealer. You guys saw how we did this earlier. You put a drop of water on and you kind of drop the hammer, bang. But you cannot do it like, that's going to be really nice, Alana. I love that. That green is beautiful. This is going to be a lot more subtle than before. She's essentially going to erase all stress. And we're blowing glass, so the more you do that, the more you become like a liquid. And so the stress gets eased. So she'll use heat as sort of like a big eraser, erase all stress, zero it out, then use a drop of water to create stress, just like before, exactly where she wants. And then unlike before, she can't just drop the boom, bang. She has to ring the pipe. So she treats it like a tuning fork, or a bell, or a guitar string, or whatever. Build up vibration and harmonics. You get that right, the vibration builds up in the pipe there. There's a choke point right there, which kind of magnifies it. Most importantly, it shoots the fracture straight across, rather than taking the path of least resistance and going through the bottom of your piece. So she's going to do that right now. I'm going to throw some Kevlar mittens on real fast. You ready, boss? All righty. So to put stuff away, we don't have to do it like the old days where they just basically use a wood board or a stick. We've got Kevlar mittens. Basically firefighters gear. And just the surface temperature of these, too cold, we have to heat them up with a hole too. So I'll bake the surface of these really quick. And so in a moment, Alana will basically take a read on the glass, assess if it's going to be at a safe temperature. She'll put that drop of water on and then work the vibration and harmonics on the next part. If you hear a hollow sound, that's the sound we hear before glass breaks. If you hear a sharp sound, we're free and clear. That's what we want. So here we go, guys. Curious enough, even certain forms like the vibration of wood, some like the vibration of metal, open forms like this, much more prefer wood. So we use a wood paddle for the detachment here. We always hope for no gusts of wind right now. Looking good. Right now, we can give her a little round of applause, guys. You're not going to scare nobody. Now, we're still at about 1350. So we're going to torch down that little edge right there. And we broke the glass so it's sharp. And then I'm going to zip past you guys really quick so you can take a look at it really quick. We'll still have a buffer of about 10 to 15 seconds. And then I got to run to the box so you guys can take a look here. Now, obviously, the color's going to be different. Nice little lip wrap there. And I got to boogie over to the annealer right here. Awesome. Thank you, Alana. Beautiful. Oh, very nice. That was a cute little wee one.
Right.
See a monster in this. Thanks, guys.
All right.
So the reason why it's inside the box there is we have to put our glass down a annealing cycle. Sometimes it's for fun. We'll put it down here on the ground. So it's fun to watch it self-destruct. But every once in a while it doesn't. It just just sits there, and everyone's like, yeah, you're lucky you won. It's like, no, that thing's stuck there with stress.
stuck.
And eventually it'll release, and I've had it happen to some of my work before, and it can be alarming. It sounds like someone broke into your house, like boom. So we put it in the box there. It's pretty simple. We hold the glass at its transitional temperatures, like right at that transition between liquid and solid. For us, that's 950. A simple 10 degrees too high, the glass can change form. We don't want that, so we're done. 10 degrees too cold, the sidewalls lock, and the areas in between can't settle right. So by holding at that temperature, it allows molecules and crystal formations to align stress-free. It only takes about an hour to 2 hours on something that thick, and then another 12 hours to deal with thermal contraction and cooling. So long story short, guys, we're going to see nothing until the next day.
Beautiful.
Cool, guys. You got any questions and stuff? We're going to keep going. But, we
Excellent.
appreciate having you guys.
is that one?
This one right here, how long do we make them the bubble? Inside here, this thing hangs out non-stop at 2,145 degrees. So as you can imagine, it can go through some pretty serious, gas and stuff. Nice thing about this is it is built with recuperation, so our exhaust heats our incoming air, saves us about 25% on energy. But Alana's just going to show you some of the thermal characteristics of glass. I mean, even not blowing this stuff, just the hot stuff by itself is pretty entrancing. Oh, it's blocking your heat.
Bubble.
Here it comes.
And act fast. And then you can just blow it up. Now it's lit up.
It's like
Great, man.
but obviously that's what we're always worried about, and that's the reason why we have to cool the tip of the glass. You get it down to that, and there's no recovery. It is so fragile.